The thunder crackled across the Montana sky as Zara Jefferson sobbed quietly in the old hayloft of her late husband's ranch. Her tears falling upon the sun bleached wood like the first drops of a coming storm. The year was 1878, and 3 months had passed since she'd buried Samuel after that ill-fated cattle drive. Now, at 26, she was alone on a failing homestead, watching her dreams crumble like the parched earth beneath her boots. Zara had come west with Samuel 4 years earlier, full of hope and ambition. They'd built their small ranch from nothing but promises and hard work. Now she was left with nothing but debt, a dwindling herd, and the crushing weight of grief that seemed to follow her like a shadow from dawn till dusk. The rain began to pelt the roof of the barn, drowning out her sobs. She hadn't heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching, nor did she notice the barn door sliding open below. It wasn't until the ladder creaked that she realized she wasn't alone. "Madam," a deep voice called up. "Anyone up there?" Zara quickly wiped her tears, smoothing her chestnut hair back into place. "Who's there?" her voice cracked. "Isaac Zimmerman, madam. I don't mean to intrude, but my horse is favoring his left front leg and the storm's getting worse." There was a pause. "I could use some shelter if you'd be so kind." Zara peered over the edge of the loft, seeing a tall figure standing below, water dripping from his wide-brimmed hat. "The ranch house is just up the path," she called down. "I saw it," he replied. Knocked, but no one answered. "Figured I'd try the barn before moving on." Zara sighed, knowing she couldn't send a man back out into such weather. "Come up then, there's plenty of dry hay." The man ascended the ladder with ease despite his tall frame. When he reached the top, he removed his hat, revealing dark hair and striking blue eyes that seemed to catch what little light filtered through the cracks in the barn walls. His face was weathered but not unkind, with a strong jaw and the hint of stubble that suggested several days on the trail. "Thank you, madam." He kept his distance, seeming to sense her unease. "I don't mean to disturb you, just need to wait out this storm." "It's fine," Zara said, trying to compose herself. "I was just—" She trailed off, unsure how to explain being found weeping in a hayloft. "No need to explain," Isaac said softly. He glanced around the barn. "Your place?" Zara nodded. "What's left of it?" Isaac settled himself on a hay bale across from her, respectful of her space. "Bad times. The worst." Zara found herself speaking before she could think better of it. "My husband died 3 months ago, trampled during a stampede while moving cattle to market." She looked down at her hands, calloused from work that had once been shared. "The bank's threatening to take everything if I can't make the payment by the end of the month." Isaac's expression softened. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Jefferson, Zara Jefferson, Mrs. Jefferson," he nodded respectfully. "I know something of hard times myself." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain pound against the roof. Finally, Isaac spoke again. "I've been riding circuit, doing odd jobs. I'm good with cattle, horses too. If you could use an extra hand for a spell, I'd work for meals and a place to sleep in this barn." Zara looked at him skeptically. "Why would you do that? You don't know me." Isaac shrugged. "My pa always said a person's character is shown by what they do when no one's watching. Finding you up here, I'd say you're fighting awful hard for something that matters to you." He paused. "Besides, I've got nowhere particular to be." Zara studied him, trying to judge his character. Tall and lean, he had the look of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. His clothes were worn but clean, and though he carried a revolver on his hip as most men did in these parts, there was nothing threatening about his manner. "I can't pay you," she admitted. "Not asking for pay," he replied. "Just a chance to help and somewhere to rest for a while." The storm continued through the night, and Zara eventually led Isaac back to the ranch house. It was a modest structure, built by Samuel's own hands, a kitchen, a small sitting area, and 2 bedrooms. She offered him the spare room formerly used for storage. "It's not much," she said, lighting a lamp. "It's a palace compared to where I've been sleeping," Isaac replied with a small smile. That night, as Zara lay in her empty bed, she wondered if she'd been foolish to trust a stranger. But something about Isaac Zimmerman's straightforward manner had seemed genuine, and if she were honest with herself, she needed help desperately. The next morning, Zara woke to the smell of coffee. She dressed quickly and found Isaac in the kitchen, stoking the stove. "Hope you don't mind," he said. "Found the coffee in the pantry." "No, thank you." She was surprised by the simple kindness. After a breakfast of cornmeal mush, Isaac asked for a tour of the ranch. Zara showed him the small pastures, the chicken coop, and the corral where only 4 horses remained, 2 workhorses, her mare and Samuel's gelding. "The cattle?" Isaac asked. "Down in the south pasture. There's not many, 15 head. We lost most of the herd in the same stampede that killed Samuel." Isaac nodded thoughtfully. "Mind if I take a look?" They rode out together, and Isaac examined the cattle with a practiced eye. "Good stock," he commented, "but they're looking thin." "The grazing's poor this year," Zara explained. "And I can't afford to buy feed." That afternoon, Isaac set to work repairing fences that had fallen into disrepair. Zara watched from a distance as he worked methodically, his movements efficient and practiced. By sundown, he'd accomplished more than she could have in a week. Over a simple supper of beans and cornbread, Isaac asked about the ranch's finances. "How much do you owe the bank?" Zara hesitated, then named a sum that made her stomach, not just saying it aloud. Isaac whistled low. "That's steep. When's it due?" 4 weeks from now." He nodded, considering. "The cattle won't fetch nearly enough at current prices, even if they were in prime condition." He paused. "What about Samuel's saddle? It's a good one, might bring some money." Zara's eyes flashed. "I'm not selling his saddle." Isaac held up his hands, "Just asking." "Sometimes we have to part with things to save what matters more." "Not that," Zara said firmly. "It's all I have left of him." Isaac didn't press the point, and they finished their meal in silence. Days turned into a week, and Isaac proved his worth many times over. He mended fences, repaired the leaky roof, and worked with the cattle, moving them to better grazing areas Zara hadn't known existed on her own land. He was up before dawn and worked until dusk, taking only brief breaks for meals. Zara found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, the way his hands moved confidently over tools, how he spoke gently to the horses, the quiet concentration on his face as he worked. She felt guilty for these observations, as if she were betraying Samuel's memory. But she couldn't deny that Isaac's presence had brought something back to life in her, perhaps just hope. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson, Isaac broke their comfortable silence. "The cattle are looking better," he said, "but they won't bring enough by themselves." Zara sighed. "I know." "There's a horse auction in Bridger Creek next week," Isaac continued. "I heard about it in town today. Good prices for sound animals." Zara stiffened. "You're suggesting I sell the horses?" "Not all of them," Isaac clarified, "but Samuel's gelding is a fine animal, would fetch a good price." Zara stood abruptly. "No, I told you about Samuel's saddle, and the same goes for his horse. I won't sell Samson." Isaac's expression remained calm. "Zara, I understand holding on to memories. But sometimes the best way to honor someone is to ensure their dreams survive, even if that means letting go of the things that remind you of them." Zara turned away, fighting tears. "You don't understand, don't I?" His voice was quiet. "I lost my wife and daughter to fever 5 years ago. Had to sell our farm in Kansas to pay the doctor bills. I know something about letting go." This revelation stunned Zara into silence. She turned back to face him. I didn't know." "No reason you should." He stood, his tall frame silhouetted against the dying light. "I kept their photographs for 2 years, carried them everywhere. One day I lost them crossing a river, thought I'd die from the pain of it." He paused. "But I found that the memories stayed even without the pictures." Zara sat back down, suddenly feeling the weight of her grief pressing down again. "I'm afraid of forgetting him." Isaac sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "You won't. But you need to decide what matters more, holding on to Samson or keeping this ranch Samuel worked so hard to build." That night, Zara lay awake long after the lamp was extinguished, thinking about Isaac's words. The truth in them stung, but she couldn't deny their wisdom. The next morning, she found Isaac in the corral, brushing down her mare. "I'll sell Samson," she said without preamble, "and 2 of the cows. But not Samuel's saddle." Isaac nodded, respect in his eyes. "Fair enough." The day of the auction in Bridger Creek arrived clear and warm. Zara had spent hours grooming Samson until his bay coat gleamed in the sunlight. She'd also selected 2 of her healthiest cows to sell, hoping together they would bring enough to make a significant dent in her debt. Isaac rode beside her on the journey to town, occasionally pointing out improvements they could make to the ranch if they had the resources. Zara found herself joining in, imagining possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider since Samuel's death. Bridger Creek was busy with ranchers and traders from all over the territory. The auction grounds buzzed with activity, horses being paraded for potential buyers, cattle lowing in holding pens, traders haggling over prices. Zara felt a pang as she registered Samson for the sale, but she steeled herself, remembering Isaac's words about honoring Samuel's dreams. The cows were easier to part with, though they represented a significant portion of her small herd. As they waited for Samson's turn in the auction, a well-dressed man approached them. His expensive suit and gold watch chain marked him as someone of means. "Fine animal," he commented, eyeing Samson appreciatively. "Arabian blood in him, if I'm not mistaken." "Yes, sir," Zara replied. "My husband purchased him from a breeder in St. Louis." "I'm Edward Thornton," the man introduced himself. "I collect fine horseflesh. I'd be interested in making you an offer before he goes to auction." Zara glanced at Isaac, who gave a small nod. "I'm listening, Mr. Thornton." Thornton named a sum that made Zara's eyes widen. It was nearly double what she'd hoped to get at auction. "That's very generous," she managed. Thornton smiled. "I recognize quality when I see it. The horse has been well cared for, and that counts for a great deal." Zara accepted his offer, and they completed the transaction on the spot. With the money from Samson and the 2 cows, she now had enough to make the bank payment, with some left over for improvements to the ranch. As Thornton led Samson away, Zara felt tears threatening. Isaac stood quietly beside her, offering silent support. "You did the right thing," he said gently when Thornton was out of earshot. Zara nodded, unable to speak. She watched until Samson disappeared into the crowd, carrying away a piece of her past. The ride back to the ranch was subdued. Zara clutched the money securely in an inside pocket, the weight of it both reassuring and somehow empty. They made camp by a stream for the night, neither wanting to travel in darkness. As they sat by the fire, Zara finally spoke. "Tell me about your wife and daughter." Isaac looked surprised by the question, but after a moment his expression softened. "My wife's name was Alina. We married young. I was 20, she was 18. She had hair the color of wheat and laughed all the time." He paused, stirring the fire. "Our daughter, Lily, was 4 when they died. She had her mother's laugh." "I'm sorry," Zara said quietly. Isaac nodded. "It changes you, losing family like that. For a long time I was just drifting, taking whatever work came along, not caring much about tomorrow." "What changed?" He looked up at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "I'm not sure yet. Something has, though." The air between them seemed to shift, charged with unspoken possibilities. Zara looked away first, suddenly aware of her heartbeat. "We should get some rest," she said. "It's a long ride home tomorrow." The following week brought a flurry of activity to the ranch. With the bank payment secured, Zara and Isaac turned their attention to improvements that couldn't wait any longer. They repaired the chicken coop, reinforced the corral fence, and cleaned out the spring that supplied water to the house. Working together, they fell into an easy rhythm. Isaac was patient, explaining techniques when Zara wasn't familiar with them, but never making her feel incapable. For her part, Zara found herself smiling more, occasionally even laughing at Isaac's dry humor. One afternoon, as they repaired a section of the barn roof, a sudden summer shower caught them by surprise. They scrambled down the ladder and into the barn, laughing as they shook water from their clothes. "That came out of nowhere," Zara said, pushing wet hair from her face. Isaac grinned, looking younger than his 32 years. "At least we know the roof doesn't leak anymore." Their laughter faded as they realized how close they were standing. Zara could see droplets of water clinging to Isaac's eyelashes, the curve of his mouth as his smile softened into something more serious. For a heartbeat, she thought he might lean down to kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, clearing his throat. "We should wait out the rain," he said, moving toward a hay bale. Zara nodded, ignoring the mix of relief and disappointment washing through her. She settled on another bale, maintaining a proper distance between them. "This is where we first met," she observed, glancing around the barn. Isaac nodded. "You were crying." Zara looked down at her hands. "I thought my world had ended with Samuel. I couldn't imagine going on without him." "And now?" Isaac asked quietly. She considered the question seriously. "I still miss him, I always will. But I'm starting to remember him without that crushing pain." She looked up at Isaac. "Thank you for that, for helping me find a way forward." Isaac's expression was solemn. "You're doing the hard work yourself, Zara. I'm just lending a hand." The rain passed quickly, and they returned to their tasks, but something had changed between them, a threshold crossed, though neither acknowledged it aloud. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies rise from the grass, Zara broke their comfortable silence. "How much longer will you stay?" Isaac looked at her, his expression unreadable in the gathering darkness. "Are you asking me to leave?" "No," she said quickly. I wondered about your plans." He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't have any fixed plans, haven't for a long time." He shifted in his chair. "But I can't stay forever as just a hired hand, Zara. It wouldn't be right." Zara felt her heart quicken. "What do you mean?" Isaac turned to face her fully. "I mean that I'm starting to have feelings that go beyond friendship or employment. And if those feelings aren't welcome or returned, then I should move on before things get complicated." Zara stood abruptly, moving to the porch railing. "I don't know what I feel," she admitted. "Everything is confused. When Samuel died, I thought I'd never feel anything again except grief. Now." She trailed off. Isaac stood as well but didn't approach her. "You don't have to know right now, but I wanted to be honest with you." Zara nodded, still facing away from him. "Thank you for that." The next day brought a tension that hadn't existed before. They worked separately for most of it, Isaac mending tack in the barn, Zara tending to the vegetative garden. By evening, the silence between them had grown heavy with unspoken words. As they prepared supper, Zara finally spoke. "I'm afraid," she admitted, her back to Isaac as she kneaded bread dough. "Of what?" His voice was gentle. "Of feeling something for you and then losing you too." Her hands stilled. "I couldn't bear it a second time." Isaac moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence but not touching her. "None of us know what tomorrow brings, Zara. All we can do is decide if today is worth the risk." She turned to face him, flour dusting her hands. "And if it isn't, then I'll ride out tomorrow and you'll have your ranch and your peace." His eyes held hers. "But I think there could be something good between us, something worth building like this ranch was for you and Samuel." Zara felt tears forming. "It feels like betraying him." Isaac shook his head. "Do you think he would have wanted you to be alone, to shut yourself away from life?" "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't." That night, Zara dreamed of Samuel. In the dream, they were walking through the ranch as it had been when they first arrived, untamed and full of possibility. Samuel turned to her, smiling that familiar smile that had once been her whole world. "You're doing fine, Zara," he said. "Better than fine." She woke with tears on her cheeks, but they weren't tears of grief. For the first time, she had remembered Samuel with fondness unclouded by pain. The next morning, Zara found Isaac already at work in the corral, repairing a broken gate. She watched him for a moment, noting the careful precision of his movements, the strength in his hands. When he looked up and saw her, his face brightened, then grew cautious, as if he was preparing himself for bad news. Zara walked to the corral fence. "I've been thinking about what you said." Isaac set down his tools and approached the fence, keeping it between them. "And? I think today is worth the risk," she said simply. The smile that spread across his face warmed her more than the morning sun. He opened the gate and stepped through, stopping just short of touching her. "Are you sure?" he asked. In answer, Zara closed the distance between them, placing her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beating strong and steady beneath her palm. "I'm sure." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer wrapped in one. When they parted, Isaac's eyes were bright with emotion. "I didn't come here looking for this," he said softly. "Neither did I," Zara replied. "But here we are." The weeks that followed were filled with work and discovery. They learned each other's habits, preferences, and histories. Isaac told Zara about his childhood in Pennsylvania, his journey west with Alina, and the dark years after losing his family. Zara shared stories of her own upbringing in Missouri, her courtship with Samuel, and their dreams for the ranch. As summer gave way to autumn, the ranch began to prosper under their combined efforts. Isaac's knowledge of cattle breeding helped improve the small herd, and Zara's vegetable garden yielded a bountiful harvest. They sold excess produce in town, adding to their savings. One crisp October evening, as they walked the property surveying their work, Isaac took Zara's hand. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the future." Zara felt a flutter of nervousness. "What about it?" He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I love you, Zara. I think I started falling for you that first day in the hayloft, though I didn't know it then." Zara's heart swelled. "I love you too," she said, the words no longer feeling like a betrayal but a new truth. Isaac took both her hands in his. "I want to stay here, build a life with you. Not as a hired hand, but as a partner in every way." He paused, his expression serious. "I'm asking if you'll marry me, Zara, not to replace what you had with Samuel, but to create something new together." Tears filled Zara's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were married in November in the small church in Bridger Creek. The ceremony was simple, attended by the few neighbors they'd come to know and the friends Isaac had made during his years of traveling. Zara wore a new dress of deep blue, with a locket containing a small photograph of Samuel tucked beneath it, acknowledging her past while embracing her future. As winter settled over the ranch, Zara and Isaac developed new routines. The evenings were spent planning for spring planting, discussing cattle purchases, and dreaming about additions to the house. They decided to build a proper study that could one day become a nursery, the possibility of children a tender hope they both shared. On Christmas morning, Isaac presented Zara with a handcrafted rocking chair. "For the porch," he explained, "though it might have other uses in time." Zara gave him a leather-bound journal. "For your thoughts," she said, "so they'll never be lost." That night, as snow fell gently outside their window, Zara rested her head on Isaac's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Are you happy?" he asked, his fingers tracing patterns in her hair. "More than I thought possible," she answered truthfully. "Sometimes I wonder if we should feel guilty for finding happiness after losing so much," Isaac admitted. Zara propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "I used to think that way. But now I believe that loving again doesn't diminish what came before, it honors it." Alina and Lily, Samuel, they would want us to live fully. Isaac pulled her close. "You're a wise woman, Mrs. Zimmerman." Zara smiled at the new name, still fresh enough to sound like a gift. "And you're a good man, Mr. Zimmerman. The kind of man who climbs into haylofts to help crying widows." "The best decision I ever made," he murmured against her hair. Spring came early the following year, bringing with it new life across the ranch. Calves were born, the garden was planted, and the orchard Samuel had started years ago finally produced its first small crop of apples. In June, as they celebrated their 7th month of marriage, Zara shared news that brought tears to Isaac's eyes. They were expecting a child of their own, due to arrive with the winter snows. That evening, they sat on the porch in their rocking chairs, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold and crimson. Isaac reached across to take Zara's hand. "When I rode onto this ranch last year," he said, "I was just looking for shelter from a storm. I never imagined I'd find a home, a family." Zara squeezed his hand. "And I was just a widow weeping in the hayloft alone. I never thought I'd find love again." Isaac's eyes were tender as he looked at her. "I promised you peace that first day, remember?" "You did," Zara nodded. "And you've kept that promise. But you've given me so much more hope, joy, a future." As darkness fell and stars began to appear in the vast Montana sky, they remained on the porch, hands linked, hearts full. The ranch around them, once nearly lost, now thrived under their care, a testament to resilience, second chances, and the healing power of love that comes unexpectedly, like a stranger seeking shelter from a storm. In the distance, a coyote called, its lonely voice rising toward the stars, but in the small house on the prairie. There was no loneliness, only the quiet contentment of two souls who had found in each other the peace they thought forever lost.